And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope that you're all doing well. I'm very happy to see you tonight and to have you back here for a new interview with a member of the European Parliament. Especially since this week it's a plenary week, so MEPs are in Strasbourg. So I'm doubly even more grateful for our guest tonight to take time from his very busy schedule to talk to us tonight. So. We will actually exchange tonight with a Spanish MEP, Adrián Vázquez Lázara, from the Renew Group, so the centrist liberal group in the European Parliament. He's 39 years old. He has been a MEP since 2020, so he is one of the so-called Brexit MEPs, so the MEPs that came in the Parliament after Brexit effect and the British MEP left. He is currently the chair of the Committee on Legal Affairs and is a member in the Committee on Agriculture and Rural Development. But as usual, before we start our conversation, I remind the house rules for any of you who would be new with us tonight. So Mr. Vázquez Lázara is going to stay with us for about an hour. After that, he will be able to go and enjoy his Strasbourg evening, where we keep streaming for about half an hour to discuss with you about what you thought in the interview, my own interpretation of things, additional explanation if necessary, that sort of thing. As usual, I'm sorry, I'm dying here. As usual, I've prepared my own questions for Adrián Vázquez Lázara, and I collected questions from you on Reddit, Discord, and the usual thing. So, and of course, you can ask your own questions live via the chat. I will keep an eye on it, and I will pick among your suggestions. So don't hesitate to participate and to react, but as always, don't spam and stay civil. The goal of the interviews is for you to better understand what MEPs do in the Parliament. What are their political priorities? What are the files they are working on? And also, what are their opinions on EU in general and some of the things that pop up in the news? So I try to invite a variety of MEPs. So this week we have a Spanish centrist / liberal MEP. We had Green MEPs last week. So you can see that we invite all variety of MEPs so that you can see the discussion, and you may agree with them or not. That's not the point. The point is for you to make your own opinion, and me, I'm just here to facilitate the discussion. So that means that we will not also go deep into policy discussion, and we will not touch on national politics unless it's relevant to EU politics. So keep that in mind when you are asking your own question. So without further ado, I suggest that we dive into so good evening and welcome to you, Adrián Vázquez Lázara. Thank you again for accepting to do this interview on my channel. So you heard me already explain it to our viewers. The goal of tonight is to put faces on the European Union and to get to know you better, so that you explain us what you're doing in Brussels. Perhaps to start off our discussion, could you perhaps briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll pick up from there and start our conversation.
Good evening. Well, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be from Strasbourg, from my office here. Well, I'm Adrián Vázquez. I'm from Spain. All my family is from Galicia, Northwest, so above Portugal. So you may know because of the pilgrimage of Santiago de Compostela. And I'm a member of the European Parliament since 2020. I've been always passionate about politics, basically international politics. I've been working in several international organizations. And I ended up here because I got involved with a new political party that was born in Spain in 2015, doing from a centrist party, a liberal party. And one thing led to another, and here I am, defending the liberal values in the European Parliament.
Oh, well, so you actually anticipated my question, where I was going to ask you how you got into politics, but you already covered that. You said you worked for other organizations. Who were you working for?
I work for the OSCE, the Organization of Security and Cooperation in Europe, that is not very famous, but it's an important organization that was funded in the 70s to try to somehow ease tensions between East and West when we have the division between the Soviet and the Western world. And I worked there first in Vienna and then in Bosnia and Herzegovina. They do a lot of capacity building, democratization. So I was there for 1 year, and then at NATO also. I work in Brussels at NATO as a researcher. And also this is very funny because I work also for 1 year in the commercial agency of South Korea in Spain. They hired me to do a lot of political reports and also economic analysis of Spain to help South Korean companies to invest and to make business in my country. So that was an interesting experience, I have to say.
So you have a background as an economist or jurist?
No, because basically my background is international relations and law. So what they wanted is do like of risk analysis from a political perspective on some economic sectors. So I have a colleague that he was economist and I was doing the political analysis. And among both of us, we did these reports.
All right. So, well, now you're in the European Parliament. So as all MEPs usually get specialized on different topics. So perhaps could you tell us what are your specialties in the Parliament?
Well, I was here. I'm in the Parliament since 2014. I was the head of cabinet of the delegation of Ciudadanos. That we had 3 MEPs. Okay. And for 6 years, I was also the responsible for all the international affairs and development of the party, which was new. We became, actually, Ciudadanos had members first in the parliament than in the national parliament back in Spain, because we didn't get into the national parliament until December 2015. So, but I was doing the whole development of the international network of the party, the Sherpa of the leader. Back then, that was Albert Rivera. So my job basically was to put the party in a position that we could be important in the liberal family. That's what I did through many years. And then when 2019 came, they offered me to go in the list. I was the head of campaign of the European elections. I was the chief campaigner. And then now I ended up in jury, in legal affairs committee, for one thing, because we wanted to have a say in all the digital legislation that was going to come. We're doing a lot of AI, Digital Service Act, Digital Markets Act, so a lot of digitalization dossiers that they were going to go through jury. Also, jury is a committee involved in immunity cases, so that was also important from a Spanish point of view. And then agriculture, because I'm from all my family is from a rural area. Actually, where I'm from, we have more cows than population. It's called Lalín, so we have more than 20,000 cows. And in Lalín, we don't get to 20,000 people living there. So to me, it made sense also to be involved in agricultural matters.
Okay. So perhaps to start on the digital aspect. So I looked a bit through your profile on the European Parliament, and I saw that you worked on artificial intelligence, which is a very hyped topic, and I think it was also talked about this week in the Parliament. So I was wondering maybe if you could walk us through what you think about artificial intelligence in terms of opportunity and in terms of risk as well, and maybe explain how the EU should tackle this technology.
Well, the first thing about artificial intelligence is that it's so broad that it's quite difficult to legislate, to do like a legal framework to oblige not only people, but companies or even the public administration how to manage artificial intelligence. So in Spain, we have a say, which means that it is impossible to set a door on an open space because it's impossible to just, frame it. But what we're trying to do is to legislate artificial intelligence from a human perspective. I would say that there are 3 ways of doing it. You have the Chinese part of it, that they use artificial intelligence in a way somehow to control population and to have a more authoritarian approach to it. Then you have the United States American approach to it, which is business oriented. So make money as much as you can with the new technologies. With artificial intelligence is also data management. So make money out of the data, make money of all the new startups or tools or businesses that come out of it. And I think that the European Union is trying to put a more human approach to it. So whatever we do with artificial intelligence, it has to be human-centric. So it has to respect human values, fundamental values. And whenever there is a decision that could affect people, even it can be anything, like let's say an autonomous car. The autonomous car is driving based on artificial intelligence. So if there is a moment that the car is going on a road and has to choose between riding over a kid that is just crossing or turning right and riding over a grandmother that is walking on the side, that decision is going to be made by artificial intelligence, by an algorithm. So what we're trying to define is, if that is going to happen, who's going to be responsible? Are we going to allow to have autonomous car that can actually have to take those decisions without a human decision at the end of the process? So that's what we're discussing right now. It's not easy, but the basic here is that whenever we decide about how we are going to regulate, it has to be based on human-centric base and also based on ethical standards, European ethical standards.
Speaking on AI, there has been already some discussion, very preliminary discussion with the US last week with the Trade and Tech Council, and one of the topic is AI. Like you mentioned, in the US they have a more business approach to AI, while in Europe we have a more human-centric. I think that's what we call it in Europe. Do you think it's feasible to combine these two approaches? Are they compatible with one another, or is it more about convincing the US to also take on board the human-centric approach?
I think that they have to be compatible because we are so interlinked that there is no option B to that. But as always, the US has its muscles and its influence on the world, not only because of its military capacities, which is also one of them, but also because of its economic capacity. But what is the main European Union tool to actually define or put his ideas or its ideas on top of the table and to influence countries such as the United States? Is the standardization. So what we are good at is to standardize legislation and to standardize how we have to use, for instance, artificial intelligence. We did the same with GDPR, with the data protection. We did the same with copyright. So the good thing about the European Union is that it always sets the standards on everything, you know? So we are going to standard that, and I think that the others will have to fall in. We are too big of a market, you know, for the American companies, for instance, not to accept that we have to find an agreement. And if we have this approach, they will end up accepting it. I'm sure about it.
Right. Another thing that you already mentioned as part of your job as a chair of the Legal Affairs Committee is that your committee regularly votes on lifting the immunity of your fellow MEPs. So could you explain to the audience what is to start this immunity, and why would the parliament sometimes lift that immunity?
Well, lifting or protecting. We do both in the Euro Committee. So basically all the members, this happens in all the national parliaments in the European Union, we have some rights. Well, not the members, the House. We have an immunity right that this is to protect members not to be chased by a state or a judiciary because of our political views or opinions or how we vote or behave in the parliament. That's why we have this immunity. However, of course, like everywhere, we may commit crimes outside our job. For instance, imagine that I'm driving my car over 180 kilometers per hour in Spain. It's a crime in Spain. It's a penal crime. So then, of course, the police will chase me, will get me, and they will say, you have immunity, but we cannot put you forward justice until your immunity is lifted. So the judge in Spain will ask the parliament to lift my immunity so they can judge me because I was driving over 180 kilometers, which is a crime in Spain. So the case will come to the parliament, it will come to jury committee, we will define a rapporteur, a member who will draft the recommendation. So Mr. Adrián Vázquez was speeding over 180, so I recommend the parliament to vote to lift his immunity so he can go to Spain and face the consequences of his actions. And that's what we do. What we don't do with the immunities, and this is something that we are not judges, we are not a tribunal. We just have to consider if there is an objective of the member state to politically chase the member of the parliament because of his or her political views or action as member of the parliament. Only that. If, of course, I was speeding over 180, it was not because I'm a member of the parliament, or they were not chasing me because of my political views. So that's what we do. We are not saying that if it's guilty or innocent. We just do is to provide, we leave the immunity so that member can actually go to justice. And most of the times it's the own member that comes to the committee and says, please leave my immunity, because either I want to defend myself because this is not fair and I think I'm going to win the case, or because it's just a fine, imagine an administrative fine for whatever a crime he or she has committed, and I want to face the consequence and pay my fine. So most of the time, they're not complex; they go very easy.
Okay. And in average, even if it's hard to say, how many procedure to lift immunity do you get, let's say, per year?
So in the last term, in 5 years, I think there were 96 procedures. And since I'm chair of the committee, which is March 2020, I think we have handled 27 or 25, something like that.
125?
But most,
wow.
no, 25.
25. Okay,
25. But most of them, they're really minor issues, like fines and all the. Most of them is traffic fines. I have to say.
Okay, well, so it's not like overwhelming. It's like most of the time it's very minor offense.
Yes, but of course we also have high political.
And
ones,
we'll talk about that in a moment. I'm sure. So going this time around the news. So I'm sure you know it. On Sunday, there was the release of what is called now the Pandora Papers, and this new wave of leaked documents showed the extent, the amount of money that was hidden by a number of people in what is qualified as fiscal paradise, fiscal heaven. And among these people are very well-known public figures, such as we have the former King of Spain, Juan Carlos, and we also have the Czech Prime Minister, Andrej Babis, who is also comes from your group, so Renew. And my question would be, what do you think the EU should do after this new wave of revelation? Bearing in mind that the EU already has a blacklist of fiscal paradise that actually was revised today, and the member state decided to remove countries from this, or at least put them on the grey list. So what do you think should be?
Well, the first thing we have to understand that the European Union is made with. I mean, we are 27 member states, and all of them, when they join, they have different fiscal legislation or taxation legislation. So that's the first thing we have to understand. And we are getting, the goal is to harmonize all of it, but it's not easy. Then the second thing is that we have been fighting very hard, at least the last 7 years I've been in this house, against fraud and against tax evasion and against tax paradises. And the legislation has improved a lot in the last 7 years. But at the end, we need all the member states to agree on this legislation, and it's not always that easy. So we are getting there. I think that the trend is positive in this regard, but we haven't get there yet. When it comes to the Pandora Papers, yes, I saw the names. But, I mean, if all of this ends up proving right, and that they committed tax evasion and they are up to penalties, legal penalties in the countries, then we have to wait for the judicial system in the countries to do its work. So until then, I'm really not fan of throwing and classifying and judging people and saying people is guilty or not until a judge or a tribunal says that. So that's the thing that I really don't like sometimes, because all these papers are many different circumstances, and I don't find fair that until there is a tribunal saying something, the people is already judging or saying that someone is a criminal or not.
But beyond the fact of saying that someone is a culprit, because like you said, you need to have a judicial process for that. That's one thing. But then it's what the papers show is the fiscal process, how people actually dodge the taxation law. So do you think it's a weakness that needs to be addressed independently of the people who do that, or?
Absolutely, it's a weakness that we are addressing, but at the same time, as I said, we have 27 different legislations regarding this. So even if it's dodgy, and this was maybe committed 7 years ago, in some countries 7 years ago, doing something like this was ethical, not good, but it was not illegal. And that's what we have to try. And this kind of legislation, we have to make it happen in the whole union, but it's not that easy, because as I said, there are different approaches to this issue and different approaches on how taxation and legislation must be set and harmonized, and we are there, but we're in the positive trend, and I think there is a common understanding and public opinion is on top of it. So in this sense, these kind of revelations, they are not bad, because they put a problem that we have on the spotlight, and that's good. But at the same time, I think it's unfair to throw some things to certain people without knowing the details when these crimes were committed, if they were a crime at the time. So I have a mixed feeling about this, but at the same time, fully committed with trying to fix this and to try to make a proper legislative framework to prevent tax evasion.
Okay, and we're going to talk about people this time, but not related to the Pandora Papers. So I already mentioned that the Czech Prime Minister, so Andrej Babiš, was mentioned in the papers, but he was already a very controversial figure in the EU. He has been accused of conflict of interest because he, by influencing the allocation of EU funds to his own company. A couple of weeks ago, he blacklisted journalists with Viktor Orban because he didn't like what they said about him. And like I mentioned, he was involved in the Pandora Papers, and the list goes on. And how do you think this situation should, the case of Andrej Babiš should be dealt with, given that he is part of Renew? So should Renew do something about it, given that Renew in the past had asked DPP to deal with Viktor Orban, they had asked the Socialists to deal with Malta because of the assassination of the journalist. So how should Renew deal with the Andrej Babiš case?
Oh, not only Renew, but ALDE Party. With ALDE Party already, when these allegations of fraud of European money were public, we made all the questions we had to the party, and the decision that was made is until there is a sentence from a tribunal, that is going to happen very soon. And then if this proves correct, then we'll have to sit down again with this party and make decisions, maybe decisions that they are not good for them. So of course, we are really looking close to this. If this is proven right, it will be not acceptable. And I think that it will bring serious consequences to their membership of the group. But until there is a decision by a tribunal, we are not going to take any decision. We respect the judicial processes, and we are going to wait for that. On what happened in the press conference, of the other day, of course, we have discussed this in the group. We have asked what happened, and we demanded explanations. Press, they must work completely free, of course, and they have the rights to do the questions and to write whatever they feel as writing, as far as they don't blame anyone on false accusations or things like that. But we have demanded an explanation actually yesterday afternoon in the group, and we have a debate, and we are going to see how this evolves. But believe me that we are screening very thorough the actions of this party from Renew.
Okay, well, I didn't know that you had taken the decision that until there was a judicial decision, that then you would sit down and see what happened. So
I mean, the judicial decision will trigger a different action. We have to wait. Of course, this has to be.
Okay, then still on Renew, but this time talking about someone different. So the current president of your political group, Dacian Cioloș, from Romania, announced that he was stepping down from the presidency of Renew to take the helm of his national party back in Romania. So the designation of the new president is said to possibly reignite internal division within the Renew group, notably between the more centrist line, so I'm thinking, for instance, of the French delegation, and the more liberal trend of Renew, so the Nordic and the Eastern liberal. Do you think this process of designating a new president could be risky for the group as a whole, and ultimately, what profile do you think the new president could have?
Well, I really don't think it's risky, because the group is very united after 2 years, almost 2 years and a half into the term. I think that personal relations also have, they're closer than at the beginning, because there were a lot of new MEPs, there were new parties, a new big party like in March, the biggest delegation with 23 MEPs. But I was today checking the voting analysis that we get every 6 months, and the loyalty, the commitment to the votes of the group is very, very high. It's over 90%. Ideologically, the parties, we are very, very similar. Of course, we have difference and we have different national interests, but I think the group has been gently and very smartly handled by Dutch Cholos until now. And now who is going to come depends on who is going to run for it. But I would say that whoever comes has to continue this line of work of bringing the group together. And maybe now that we are a proper group, at the beginning we have to, to understand the dynamics and so on. And now that we have that, the new president, in my opinion, what he or she should try to achieve in the next couple of years is to make Renew even a more important player in the parliament. We are the kingmakers. S&D and EPP, they don't have the majority anymore. So Renew, for the first time in the history of the European Parliament, the two big groups don't have majority, so they need us. And I think that now that the group is very in a cohesion mode, we need to make a step forward and try to become a stronger kingmaker than we were before, because we are a very established group now. So whoever comes, I think that anyone who is going to run is going to try to achieve this. I'm sure. And I have heard a few names, but of course it's not official, so I cannot tell. But the names I heard, all of them, I'm sure that they could do a very good job.
I have a couple of more questions on that, but I see in the chat someone who is asking whether within Renew to take decision, do you have a unanimity rule? How does it work?
For the presidency, no, we have a vote. We vote. It's a secret vote. I mean, we haven't decided yet the system, because whenever we vote, we change. We're going to decide it tomorrow. But I imagine that we will decide is one MEP, one vote, and we will cast a vote in a, how do you say in English?
A ballot box.
In a ballot box, and we see we are 97 MEPs as of today, if I'm not wrong, and whoever gets the majority will win. If there are more than two candidates, maybe we do two rounds. One round to see if someone in the first round, I guess, if it gets more than 50%. I don't know what we will decide tomorrow. I have to wait. But it's just one member, one vote. So that's how it works.
And coming back on the structure of Renew, the political equilibrium within Renew. Even if, like you mentioned that there is a high level of loyalty within the groups, the group pushed in the vote mode is voting the same way. There are still a number of themes in which it's known that there are different tendencies within the group. Well, I'm thinking, for instance, on trade, where we have sometimes very different views on the topic. So, how do you smooth the differences between the different delegations, the different tendencies, and sometimes you, let's say, agree to disagree?
I mean, of course, I have to explain that the magic of the European Parliament is not like in national parliaments, that you see it live when they go to the plenary and you see the different political. The magic in the European Parliament happens in the political groups, because the first people that you have to convince is your colleagues, because of course we come from 27 different member states. Each member state even could have more than one party in the same political group. In our party, we are two Spanish parties. In our group, there are two Spanish parties, two Romanians, two Netherlands, two Swedish. So the magic of the negotiations happen in the group. And the first thing that we understand is that whatever happens, if you go out of the group with a position, without the support of your group, then there is nothing you can do in the plenary. Because if we are almost 100 in our group, in the plenary, we're 701. So the first thing you have to do is convince your colleagues that your line is a good one. And if you don't convince them, you have to get into the middle. And the good thing about our group, I believe, is that we are all from centrist. We are all from centrist and liberal movement. So we are very used to be in the middle of almost every political negotiation that we have done in our lives. So at the end, we find agreements. Of course, each delegation has red lines. But I would say that liberals or centrist parties, we don't have that many. We have some red lines when it comes to very particular issues, and they are not that common throughout the term in the European Parliament. And whenever there are, of course, there are sometimes that delegations, they cannot vote aligned, but really, the percentage is really small, and at the end, we find agreements. The good thing about Europe is that we always find a way to agree to disagree and to find common positions as well.
In the question that I collected from Reddit and elsewhere, I received actually a number of quite hostile questions, I have to say, towards your group, towards Renew Europe. And basically, I'm not going to ask them because I find them a bit too aggressive and not very constructive to be interesting. But basically, the underlying theme under it is that the idea that Renew would be against social protection and instead prioritize the economy. So that's more or less the theme of this question. Do you think this vision of Renew is fair? And if not, what would you say would be the kind of EU level social protection that Renew would support?
Well, I mean, that's very broad because social protection is so broad and it's absolute to so many interpretations. What I would say that a liberal, what it wants is that everyone competes on the same level. But as we know, our societies are not perfect. That doesn't happen. So then is when social protection jumps in. So social protection comes when people cannot compete on the same level or they have some problems that they cannot solve by themselves. And then the state has to protect them. And for that, we can use many examples of education, for instance. The state has to provide proper education so people with no means to go maybe to private schools, public schools should be as good as them, and that's what the state does. For instance, our health system. In Spain, we're very proud of our health system because everybody goes to the public health system because it works and it's really one of the best in the world. So, of course, liberals will support that. And in Renew, you have different approach to it depending on how their countries are, because it's not the same to talk about social protection in the Netherlands than in Spain. It's absolutely two opposite systems. And maybe what a socialist defends in the Netherlands is what a liberal defends in Spain. And a socialist will say is against socialism. So it's very broad question, so it's difficult to say. But no, I think the liberals are quite in the middle. And people sometimes they confuse liberalism with neoliberalism that comes from the United States and from the Thatcher era and so on. That has nothing to do with European liberalism, I would say.
And one example that was mentioned repeatedly in those questions is the idea of a EU-wide minimal wage. So I know it's a very complicated issue within the EU, but yourself, where do you stand on the debate?
I would say that if you put the minimum wage of Finland in Spain, where the cost of living, or let's put another example, in Cyprus, where the cost of living is completely different, doesn't make any sense, because what you will actually do in Cyprus is kill the economy, because there will not be any company capable of paying the Finnish minimum wage. And on the other way, if you want to harmonize the minimum wage and you get half of the top minimum wage, which probably is the northern countries, and half of the minimum wage in Cyprus and southern countries, the minimum wage in the rich countries will be really, really low. So the people will not be able to actually make a living with the minimum wage. So that kind of petition is unrealistic. You just cannot, your minimum wage has to be related to your national economy and to the national cost of living and your national GDP per capita and so on. So that's why it cannot be harmonized at European level.
So let's go closer to home. Let's talk about the Spanish issue. So I'm not going to teach you that. And Catalonia has been a very divisive issue at Spanish level, of course, but also at European level. And we have seen in 2019 the election of a number of independentist figures, including your colleague Carles Puigdemont in European Parliament. So my first question is: do you think Europe has a role in the resolution, in the Pacific resolution of the Catalonian issue, or should Europe stay out of it and leave it to Spain to deal with it?
I think that the Catalan issue is an internal affair of Spain, which means that Spain is the one that has to deal with it. So it's not an international conflict on anything of that matter. So the European Union has nothing to play there. And also I have to say that the Commission, the Prime Ministers back in the time, all of them, not even one, they all supported this. It was an internal affair of Spain, and Spain had to deal with it. And that's the only thing. The other thing is that we have to understand that the European Union was created to prevent the Union to fall into nationalism again, because we all know what nationalists took Europe to do 75 years ago. So it surprised me a lot that when traveling, people, as many times they raise the Catalan issue, and that amazes me how people that in their countries, they blame nationalists for a lot of, like Brexit. Brexit is a consequence of ill nationalism and populism. And the Catalan independence movement is the same. So we're trying to do a European Union, of free citizens, that we can move around everywhere, that we don't mind of what color is your skin or where you were born, you can work everywhere. We're trying to achieve that in the European Union. And you still find people in Europe trying to support the movement that is the opposite, that wants to close up, build borders, mingle only among them, talking only their language. So it really amazed me how they actually managed to sell an idea that it goes against the fundamental values of the Union.
And even if indeed the Commission, the members there have always said it's a Spanish matter, it's for the Spanish to solve it. The EU has been indirectly involved through the Court of Justice of the European Union, because there has been a number of cases related to an extent to Catalan MEPs. So, for instance, at the beginning of the mandate, Spain, the Spanish government tried to deny the seat to a number of Catalan MEPs. They lost the case, so to say, in the Court of Justice, so the MEPs became MEPs. We also saw more recently Mr. Puigdemont, who saw his immunity lifted by the Parliament, and the Court of Justice confirmed this the lifting of the immunity. And I think last week he was arrested in Italy on the basis of a European arrest order issued by Spain. So there is still a bit of a layer of European law. But my point here is, do you think that even if it's indeed an internal affair of Spain, the manner in which Spanish government tried to deal with the Catalan MEPs, so the one who were independentists, was appropriate with the European arrest order, that sort of thing?
Well, first of all, we have to say, as you just mentioned, the Catalan independentist MEPs, because there are Catalan MEPs in my delegation. There are 2 of them, and they are not independentists. You know, so we have to make the difference. Not all the Catalans are independent. Actually, less than half of them. Then the second thing is, when it comes to the Court of Justice, Spain did not lose any of those causes. Actually, Junqueras, who was one of the Catalan independentist leaders that made that thing against the constitution and that illegal referendum, with other 8 regional ministers back then, they went to jail. They faced justice, and there was a judge, a judicial process, and they ended up being guilty, and they were in jail for a certain number of years. And those were that the European Union Justice Court of Justice said that they couldn't be MEPs. With the case of Puigdemont and the others, this is different because they fled justice. Yes. So they fled to Spain. So it's not like they are exiles; that they fled justice. They left or their colleagues that they did the same illegality back in Spain, and they faced justice because of what they did. They misused public funds, and they do an illegal referendum that the constitution does not cover. So it's not because of their ideas or so on, because there were hundreds of independentist Catalans in top positions that they are not in jail because they just defended ideas, they won elections, but they did not commit a crime. That's it. So these 3 MEPs, they fled the country, and the European Parliament, the President Sassoli, accept them in the Parliament without all the documentation that the European Parliament demands for a member to actually be legally a member. And that is true that the European Tribunal of Justice did not say that was against that, and they became MEPs. But now they have the process in the European Justice, and we have to wait until the sentence. So until then, we'll see what happens. They were arrested in Italy, but the thing is, they couldn't be sent to Spain, and this is something that I have to say very often publicly, until the process that is open in Luxembourg, in the European Court of Justice, is solved. One that is solved, and they cannot go to any other justice tribunal because the European justice is then we'll see what happens. But what happened in Italy is because the arrest warrant was active, but it was active but ineffective as far as there is an open process regarding their case in the Luxembourg court. So we have to wait for that. I have complete faith in the European justice, and we'll see what happens in the end. But I'm positive that these 3 MEPs, that they committed very, very serious illegalities, they will face justice in Spain, and then we'll see what the judge decides, if they're guilty or not.
All right. And last question on the more political aspect of Catalonia. The new government in Spain, so the socialist government, try to take a more conciliatory approach towards the Catalan independentists. Do you support this attempt to de-escalate things with them and try to sit down the table and find a solution?
I always support the escalation measures, but as far as they don't send the wrong message. So the thing is, you have to understand that challenging the constitution of a full democratic country is very serious issue. It's very serious issue. And if you send a message that you can't do that and then get pardoned, I don't think is the best message to all that population in Catalonia, mainly, which is the huge majority, and in Spain is 99%, that they felt attacked by a regional government who unilaterally decide to not avoid by the constitution, which is the piece of paper of legislation that binds us all together. So I'm amazed how now in the European Union, a lot of people say, oh, Hungary and Poland, they're going against the treaty of the European Union when they are trying to eliminate the separation of powers between justice and the executive branch, or like in Hungary or the Czech Republic, like you asked me at the beginning of today, they are attacking free press. But then when most of these people, you ask them about Catalonia and they feel that was right, going against constitution. But Hungary and Poland, they cannot go against the treaty of the European Union. But Catalonia can go against the Spanish constitution. So, that makes me think and wonder a lot.
And very final question on that: do you ever talk with your independent Catalan colleagues like Mr. Puigdemont or not?
No, I do not. But I do talk with many other independentist Catalans that they are good friends of mine. But with them in particular, with Toni Comín, there are three of them that they are asked by the Spanish justice, which is Clara Ponsatí, Toni Comín, and Carles Puigdemont. And with Toni Comín, yes, I have exchanged a couple of, hi, how are you? And how is the weather? How is life in Brussels? But nothing else.
All right.
It's not a personal issue. You have to understand that. It's just, I don't, it's not personal. It's just,
okay, it's not personal. It's just that you never came across them, and so you never had the chance to have a chat with them. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was asking because I know that some other countries I knew, for instance, that in the past some of the British Tories refused to talk to some Irish MEPs who were part of IRA in the past. So
not my case. But don't compare me IRA with
no,
this.
No, of course.
IRA used to kill people. If you ask me with ETA people, then I would not talk to them.
Okay.
But with Catalan independentists, they are not terrorists. Of course, I will talk with them with no problem.
All right. Still on Spain, a question I received was how does the European Union plan to help the communities in the rural and depopulated areas of Spain, such as Cuenca and Teruel? Sorry if I butchered the name.
And those are very good examples on how the huge problem we have, first of all, with the generational problem in those rural areas, second of all, with the lack of economic opportunities, which is a huge problem. And the third problem we have is that when the population gets older in these regions, but at the same time, they get less and less public services like good hospitals or ambulances and so on, because there is not enough people that justifies such investment. So the European Union, the first thing that they did good is foster, and in Spain, we are really good at this, is trying to foster that 4G and telecommunications reach every small rural village in Spain. Actually, now in Spain, we have 4G over 90% of the territory. You have to understand that in Germany, they don't reach 65%. So in Spain, we are good at that. And most of this is done with European money. And now also with the pandemic, we saw that many more people, they're trying to go back to these rural areas to enjoy that kind of life, which is wonderful, because they have a good connection and they can do a lot of teleworking from those areas. The second one is we are in this new, in the new budget for agriculture, the European agriculture, for CAP, Common Agricultural Policy, we put almost 3% of money just to people who will work in the agriculture sector below 40 years. We're trying to remove and push forward the generational change or renew. I don't know how you would say that in English, generational shuffle in the rural areas in the agricultural sector.
I see what you mean. I don't have the word, but I see what you mean.
So we are doing, and then as well formation. We're trying to, because back in the day, at least in many southern countries. In the north, it was much more professionalized, all the agricultural sector, because you had a lot of engineers at the end. In the south, we didn't reach that level yet. So we are investing and we are organizing a lot of formation and educational programs to try to foster first the interest and then the capabilities of people that could live in rural areas working, for instance, in agriculture, but they can actually make a good living. They can actually make a business out of their agricultural exploitations. So those are one of the few issues that we are pushing. But the main thing is going to be the digitalization and the capacity of everyone. I have a house in rural Galicia, and I put internet on it because it didn't reach until 2015, and I managed to have internet 4 years ago.
Oh,
and
okay.
now, last week, I was there on Thursday and Friday working from my house in Galicia, while 3 years ago, that would have been impossible. So I spend more time now there because I have the digital connection that makes me and my wife as well capable to work from rural areas. So I think that's going to be the future. Digitalize the rural areas and diversify the economic sectors there.
Okay. I see that I have a bit of a lively conversation in chat about your party in Spain, Ciudadanos, and they're discussing about the fact that at local level, you have been in some region making alliances with Vox, so the far right party, while at European level, you are in the liberal group and you're very much involved against the far right at European level. So I guess that the discussion is a bit where do you stand actually? I mean, are you in favor of alliances with Vox or do you consider them as far right and we don't talk to them?
Well, I will ask, where do we have that agreement? Because I'm not aware of it.
I'm trying to
we
go
don't,
back in the
We don't
chat.
have any government agreement with Vox anywhere.
Wasn't there like a negotiation at some point? I remember a bit a discussion with Ciudadanos and Vox, but I don't know if they were like actual agreements. It's just like I remember there was something about the relationship between Ciudadanos and
well, but that was used by the socialists. For instance, Andalusia, one of the biggest regions in Spain, we're in the government with PP, conservative. But the government is us. But of course, we negotiate with other groups to push forward new legislation with all of them, like a budget. And in those cases, we also negotiate with Vox. Then the second one here in the parliament, Vox is not in ID, which is
yes, it's ECR.
Extreme right. It's ECR, and the socialists here, they negotiate with ECR and GUE and EPP and us, because ECR is not here. We don't consider them extreme right. They are ultra conservative, but they are not extreme right. So this was one of the mantras that the Socialist Party used to polarize politics in Spain, and that's why Spanish politics are now so polarized between right and left, because they start campaigning on Vox, and start paying people that, for instance, Ciudadanos had a government agreement with Vox in Europe. And if they find one, I will resign right now. There's no any government with Vox and Ciudadanos in any place in Spain. Okay. So if they find it, I'm very happy to see where, because it doesn't exist.
Okay, well, we it's just I was reacting to what the chat was discussing. So
I know.
You gave a very clear answer to that. So
I had the same question here 3 years ago, many times, and 2 years ago. But in the government with us, there is no. We are in government with Partido Popular in 2 regions, in Andalusia and Castilla y León, and we are in some governments with socialist parties in some cities, in some
local government.
Local governments. Yeah.
Okay. So to go back at EU level, so you're speaking to us from Strasbourg right now, in France, where the parliament is holding its monthly plenary session, even if there is 2 in October. There's a lot of debate, as you know, on whether the Strasbourg seat should even be kept or not. If it's not a relic of the past. So, what is your opinion on the debate on the Strasbourg seat? And bearing in mind, I'll say that for the audience, that the getting rid of Strasbourg would be a decision that would be only for the member state to take, because it's in the treaty, so it's up to them to decide. But on the political debate, where do you stand?
So now that we are in a private conversation and my good friends from Emmaus are not listening, I would say that the European Parliament needs to have only one place to meet. Not only because of economic reasons, which that makes sense, but also for environmental reasons. Moving every month here, the whole Parliament is a lot. So I clearly stand on the one seat policy. But perfectly explained, is a matter of the treaties and the member states. However, if this happens in the future, I will also support that we have to find another activity for Strasbourg or Brussels. I'm not saying that it has to be Brussels. I actually like Strasbourg better. I think it's more beautiful. But whatever city gets without the seat of the parliament, and we need to find a different thing for that city. There was a proposal, for instance, in Strasbourg to actually use these facilities to do a European university, a campus, something like that. But we have to find a plan B for the city. But of course, I'm fully supportive of the one seat policy.
Okay. So still on the, let's say, the more institutional questions. If you had the power to change literally anything about the EU and the way EU politics is being done, what would you change and why?
So
Big
many
questions,
things.
I know.
First thing, I will give legislative initiative to the parliament. I know that's not very sexy, but I will give the parliament. Second one, I will eliminate the majority system in the council, the unanimity, for instance, on some issues. And then the third one, and this is not going to sound sexy either, but I will harmonize the tax base of the union.
Okay. Taking notes on my side. Discussion. Sorry. Very clear. I see we still have a bit of time, so let me go check if I have extra questions that I set aside. Oh yes, I have a very classic question on the channel is what's your stance on the whole debate about the federal European Union? Are you in favor of that? Are you against? Are you no particular opinion at this point?
Well, we have a big fight with that within the Liberals, but I have to say that in the political program of my party for the 2014 and 2019 elections, we open it with the United States of Europe, taking this sentence from the book of Giver Hofstad back in the 90s.
Okay.
I think that replies the question.
that replies the question. I see that the chat is always very still active on the old Spanish politics thing, and then
it happens.
It happens. Well, that's part of the game, and so they are.
I'm used to it. So
the new question is why. So you're not against alliances with the Parti Popular, which is the EPP in the European Parliament, but at the same side they say, oh yeah, but the Parti Popular has kind of a dodgy past, let's say, in recent history, Spanish history, and they're not against agreements with Vox, etc. So by way of association, if PP is talking to Vox, do you have a problem with PP, so to say?
Well, if you think that way, probably you will not have friends in life.
Yeah. Probably. Okay.
So you'd probably be alone at home. You couldn't talk with anyone.
I have another question from the chat, and actually a very topical question of the last few weeks. What do you think about the idea of an EU army? It's been quite a big topic since Afghanistan, the submarine affair, etc.
EU army.
Yes.
Yeah, the strategic autonomy that Mr. Macron is talking about all the time lately. I believe that we can talk about EU army on aspirational terms. I think it could be a good ending goal. But now I think that we have to focus on pooling and sharing. We have to focus on whoever has certain capacities and capabilities, military capabilities. We can do some pooling among the member states and share its use. Do some, like, we are working on this rapid deployment troops that will be fully European with a number up to maybe 5,000 operatives, and to have that ready to actually deploy them to Afghanistan if something like that, I hope not, happens again. So I think that we have to go in that direction. Talking about a European Union army is, I mean, it's good if you want in the future in many, many, many years. But now, with how the armies are done, I would say that we have to focus the European Union member states on pooling resources and sharing capacities.
But still on that, I mean, technically there is already some form of pooling. We have the European battle groups, but they have never been deployed since they exist. I think 2007, because there was, and I think it relates to something you mentioned earlier. because you need unanimity in the council to deploy them. So I hear the argument that first we need to pool resources, but if you may pool 5,000 soldiers, 50,000 soldiers, or even more, but if they can't be deployed because there is no the political decision to deploy them is impossible to take because you need unanimity. Isn't that defeating a bit the purpose of it?
Well, actually, what we need to actually go or try to direct the union is to eliminate those unanimities, if you ask me. But at the same time, we have to understand that defense is the last piece of national sovereignty by many. They feel that this is the last thing that they will never want to lose for the European Union for the reasons. But I think that as we get more and more interlinked among us, and we are becoming a political and economic union, at the end, we're going to have to be a defense union. So the autonomous strategy and these fast deployment units that because what you mentioned is still not fully operative, they are talking about smaller compounds that could be easier to send 5,000 people to evacuate citizens in Afghanistan. Is not the same as sending a fully fledged 60,000 military. So I think that's why we're going smaller, because it's going to make member states more flexible to use it. So I think it's a good start to start talking about this autonomy. How do you say? How President Macron says now it's too late. I'm starting forgetting.
Don't worry.
Autonomous strategic autonomy. Thank you.
I have another question from chat. Going back to something we discussed a bit already, which is the old debate around the minimum wage. So Ikaos, who is from Denmark, actually, is asking your opinion about the Nordic model. So the idea that in Nordic countries they don't have a set minimal wage set in stone by law, but it's a product of negotiations
between the unions and
the union. Yeah. So do you think that this could be an alternative? And also the one other thing that the Nordics fear is that any European action on the front of minimum wage would be a threat to their own negotiation-based model.
And the thing is, in the Nordic countries, it does work, and it has worked amazingly in the last decade. We just have to see the results. And of course, whenever we touch upon this issue here, all the Scandinavians, regardless of their ideology, they're against, because they want to protect something that not only are very proud of it, but that for them it does work. In other countries, that will not work. In Spain, I'm telling you, it will not work. Also, always the government has to some unions and business owners, to put a name to them, they don't reach these kind of agreements. Our economic structure is completely different to the one in the Scandinavian countries. We have a completely different culture when it comes to these issues, and governments depend a lot on ideology to actually depend on the decision made by unions and business owners. For instance, a socialist government will never allow that, because they will always prefer to support union or even took unilateral decisions, and maybe a conservative a government will never allow the unions to actually reach an agreement like that. So I don't even think they want to open the possibility of exploring that option, knowing how our system is. So I think I don't think it will work in Spain, but it definitely does work in the Scandinavian countries. I mean, it's a success story.
Yep. So I'm looking at time, and we're reaching the 1 hour threshold. So we're perfectly on time. That's perfect. I'm very happy. And what before I'm starting to do the briefing and you go enjoy your evening, I would invite you to say final words to the audience to conclude a bit the interview, and then we'll move on our side.
Well, first of all, thank you for interviewing me and for making me share with all the viewers this hour. Thank all the viewers to connect on Tuesday at 8 o'clock to talk about European politics. That's one of the things that make me more happy about my job, to talk with people about Europe, because of course sometimes I'm not the sexiest of the topics, but I like the thing, I like the project, and I also love what I do on my job. So it's always a huge pleasure to share my thoughts on what we do in this house with as many people as possible. So thanks a lot. It's been a real pleasure.
Well, thank you, Mr. Adrián Vázquez Lázara, for taking the time. As you can see, chat, make sure to thank him for taking the time. You can follow him on his Twitter account. I put the little link under the video feed. So on this note, well, thank you again, Mr. Vasquez Lázara. I enjoyed the plenary as much as it is possible. And chat, stay here. We're gonna start the debrief. Good evening,
Okay.
Mr. Vasquez Lázara. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
All right. So tell me everything. What did you think? I think it was a nice interview. They created debate in the chat, but debate is healthy. It's good. We like debate. I'm stop second. Hold. Voila. Now I don't have the sound like so yeah, it was interesting. I enjoyed. It was for once someone who is answering in a short manner. That was that's perfect. I wish everyone was doing that. But yeah, he was very clear in his answer. So I very much enjoyed the interview. Looking in the chat and I see someone will take holiday permanently. Bye. All right. So what was I saying? Yeah, I was saying that nice. I'm taking notes and we'll go through that. So something that he mentioned at the beginning of on political experience, he mentioned that he was actually already in the parliament because he was an assistant, like me to an extent. Sorry, my cough is killing me tonight. So yeah, he was an assistant in the parliament before. I don't think I've met him. But he was a bit of a different kind of assistant than for me. I was working for an MEP, a specific MEP, and he was what is called a delegation MEP, meaning that a delegation assistant, meaning that he was working for the entire Spanish Ciudadanos delegation. So he was doing things that he was not working on the policy level of this or that MEP. He was doing things for the entire delegation, like whether it could be in this case he said it was about something's wrong, Daddy. What happened? Tell me. Down. Okay, well, on my side everything works, but there's problem with the audio. On my side I have the connection. The connection is fine. My audio is a bit low. Okay, I'm gonna boost it. Is it better? Is it better now? Tell me. Oh yeah, my noise filter is quite aggressive because I have actually a lot of background noise in the in my room, unfortunately. So that's why I have a pretty aggressive noise gate. So sorry about that. I boosted the sound of the mic, so I hope it's better. So yeah, I was saying that the MEP was an assistant like me, but he was working for the entire delegation and he was in charge of let's say the international output of the delegation to improve the positioning of Sweden. What did I note? We talked about AI. Thank you for the follow, Nadine. Welcome among us. I don't want to see the puns in the chat. So yeah, we talked about AI and the different models today in the world around AI. The European approach, which is more human rights centric. I think the actual expression is human centric. A big emphasis on human rights, the protection of the rights of people, etc., etc. The US, which is more economic focus, so that AI can feed on data and use that for economic benefits. And finally, the Chinese approach to AI, which is, well, it's China, so of course it's going to be very much to serve the interest of the state in terms of social control. I mean, we know that they use that for what social scoring. So basically, what you do in China feed into a social score that will determine what you can do or cannot do in China. It's very much a Black Mirror kind of thing. He mentioned that European was quite strong when it came to creating standards, which is true, and that these standards would then influence the world, and that's actually something true. It's called the Brussels effect, and I'm not inventing that. You have academics in the US who came up with the expression and the concept, meaning that due to the size of its market, the common norms that the EU is adopting de facto become not de facto norms for the outside, but heavily influence what other countries will do because they want to have access to the European market, so they have to follow what the EU is doing. And we have seen that, like he mentioned, he said in the field of data protection. He mentioned copyright. I don't think copyright is necessarily a strong suit of the EU, at least in terms of standardization. And he hopes that in AI is gonna be like that. But it's indeed something true. You can actually I've looked up not the original, but a conference made by the academic. We then came up with the concept of Brussels effect. It's very very interesting. So if you have 1 hour to look at it on YouTube, go for it. Let's see. Okay, see on my about my mic. It's like that basement of Euro trolls. Exactly. I'm in the basement. Exactly. Okay, Bayesian effects. Fine. How much the average MEP know about AI anyway? Well, I mean, MEPs are heavily specialized. That's how it works. So the average MEP doesn't know much about AI apart from what they would see and read in the news. But what matters is the MEP who work on it, because they are the one who would be leading the debate, and they are the one who the other MEPs will go and see, okay, what's going on AI? What do we think on AI? So what matters is not the average MEP, it's what the specialist MEP, the one who are leading MEP. Oh. Okay, I'm boosting it again. Up. Tell me if it's better. I put it at the maximum. I'm gonna increase the gain up. Okay, I'm putting it basically at the maximum now, so you can even hear the noise behind. So apology for that. I hope it wasn't too bad during the interview itself. What was I mentioning? Yeah, AI. Do they have competent consultants? Well, the people that they hire for that, it's their assistants, of course, because their job is to get knowledgeable about stuff and help their MEPs. The MEPs themselves work on the issue, they meet people, etc. So with time, they acquire competence. But it's a team effort. So of course the assistant, the critical advisors, etc., will become more and more knowledgeable about it. They will read about it. They will meet people about it. The MEP himself will read about it. They will meet people about it. They will negotiate. So they will get more and more knowledgeable. So ultimately, yeah, to answer the question, the average MEP doesn't know much about AI, but the specialist MEPs will know much more, and that's what matters, because they will be the one who drive the issue at parliament level and at political group level. Is there any discussion about human level AI becoming citizen and thus being able to vote and above human level, or is it too early to infancy? It's way too early. I mean, so for the human level AI, I think it's called officially the complete AIs. It doesn't exist right now. It's purely theoretical. For now, we only have partial imperfect AI, so AI that are very specialized or can have some level of capacity, but they can't in any way, shape, or form completely mimic human level thinking. So it's at this point it's pretty much science fiction. So there is no debate about it. And actually no, the debate there is a very theoretical debate in the EU when it comes to regulation, because one of the reasons the EU wants to make regulation and what is called human-centric regulation is to say AI is the future. It's still in development, still early. But so that means that we need to set the rules now before it goes too far and it breaks up stuff. So that's more or less the thinking, the European thinking, to try to get the rules first so that we don't have to fix it later. That's more or less the approach. But human level AI, it's not a thing. It's not a thing. It doesn't exist, and we're not anywhere near a debate that AI would become citizens or be able to vote. I mean, legally speaking, you would have to be reinventing everything we know about law, about the legal status, citizenship, etc. So I don't see that happening anytime soon, and I would not want, to be honest, personally, to see AI becoming citizens. Are there some formal think tank about the AI topic that are accessible or advising the MEPs? Oh, I'm sure that, yeah, there are think tanks and NGOs that work on the AI topic and that are providing inputs to the MEPs, to institution, and it's a thing. It's part of the normal lobbying and research and advertising effort. So it's a thing. It's a thing. Laws are a slow thing. Wouldn't be surprised someone started already doing the groundwork. Yeah. In theory, someone probably started to do the groundwork, but technically, it's not there. It's at this moment, it's not there. Laws are too slow. Well, that's how laws are by definition. The laws is always playing catch up with society. So that's how it is. We may be happy or unhappy about the fact that laws are going fast or slow, but well, that's how it is. What do I have? We talked about the immunity of MEPs, so we explained that quite well in a lot of cases. It's actually the MEP himself who goes to the parliament and says, I want you to lift my immunity so that I can deal with whatever I have to pay the penalties or whatever. So in many cases, it's the MEP who actually wants the immunity to be lifted so that you can get rid of the whole thing, of the problem. And it's quite rare that we have high-level politically divisive process. It happens, but it's not the norm. We talked about the division within Renew. So we said that actually Renew is very much united, that there is a vote discipline, which is probably true. I didn't check Vote Watch lately, but still, and on at the ideological level, there are some points in which there are divisions on the Renew, like trade, for instance, like to Nordic, they consider the Southerners to be terrible protectionists. So just to name an example. So he mentioned that Renew is a kingmaker, indeed, because they stand in the middle. And already in the previous mandate, even if they were not necessary to make a majority, they were already de facto the kingmakers, because often there would be divisions within the socialist or the EPP, and usually in average the majority of the parliament was going where the majority of ALDI, so the predecessor of Renew, was going. What else do we have? We talked at length about the EU wage, so I don't think we need to come back on that. Catalonia, well, we had very clear views on that. It's an internal matter, and indeed the commission the commission is and members have always said that it's a national matter. It's for Spain to solve, and there has been even like the what it's called the Prodi doctrine, which is a doctrine that was defined by the president of the commission, Romano Prodi, at the end of the 90s, about the scenario where you would have a new country, a separatist country that gets independence and applies to get into the EU. And so the debate was, would that new state get automatically the EU membership? So, for instance, if Catalonia was to secede successfully from Spain, would they become automatically and immediately members of the European Union because they were member of Spain before, with a member of the European Union? And the Prodi doctrine is to say that no, any new state must go through the entire process of adhesion. So it would they wouldn't. Catalonia would not become automatically a member of the European Union. Scotland would not become part of the Union because the UK was part of the Union, etc. They would have to. It would take actually years for it to process. How long would that take? It takes actually quite some time. I don't remember the when it's fast track, it lasts at least 5-6 years. If I remember, for Croatia, it took I think at least 5 or 6 years, or if not 10 years. I mean, it's a very long, very long process because when you join the EU, you have to make sure that you have a whole series of conditions, and it's that's why it takes time, because you have to make sure that the goal of the game for the EU is to ensure that when the new country arrives in the EU, it's not too far behind at economic level and at political level, so that it can catch up. It can catch up with the other. And indeed, like I was saying, you have to not be vetoed by anyone, because of course adhesions require unanimity of member states. So that's also a point. But it's a process that takes a lot of time. Purely theoretically speaking, if Catalonia was to become independent, and let's assume that it was becoming independent in a way that Spain would be okay with, that would be legal, so to say. Spain would have to not give a veto at EU level for Catalonia to join the EU, but the process for Catalonia to join the EU would be faster than normal, because they are already economically and politically more or less at the level of the EU, because they were already part of the EU. They already have the acquis, etc., etc. It's not time casing in case of normal joining process. Okay, I'm lost now. It's not time wasting in case of normal joining process. However, for countries that are already in the EU, they are compatible. Yeah. That's why it would go faster in the case of countries that were already part of the EU. It would be faster, but still, it would take a few years, because I mean, it's all process, and it takes time. What else did I have on my pretty list? So we talked a lot about Spanish politics. I'm not Spanish, so I will not even try to question it. Even if, I mean, he had a pretty clear line saying that Vox is not far right, it's ECR. Everyone talks with ECR, including the socialists, so it's fine. And that he was pretty confident that there was no coalition or agreements with Vox. So until the contrary is proven, I will believe what he is saying. Vox not being far right is like saying the sky is maroon. Yeah, it can be semantic. I mean, technically, for instance, brothers of Italia, which is arguably possibly a bit more on the right than the Lega in Italy, is part of the ECR. So yeah, I mean, it's a question of semantic, and I mean, I leave that to the politologues to decide who is ultra conservative and who is actually far right. Okay, yeah, if they wave Franco's flag and say "Viva Franco," that, yeah, I can see the issue. But even if they are part of the ECR, Vox is definitely not among the most loved political parties in Brussels. That's for sure. If that's not for me, you wait the Vatican to elect me new pope. Well, that's for the Vatican to decide. But yeah, I get the point that saying that it's CCR means that it's not far right is, well, not a guarantee. We talked about what? We talked about Strasbourg and Strasbourg. So he said that he wanted single seat. So he said either everyone in Strasbourg or everyone in Brussels, and he said that in exchange, it would be necessary to give something in exchange to France. So that, for instance, he mentioned the example of a EU university to replace the Strasbourg seat. Even if it would be up to France to decide, but well, I think I mentioned that already quite a bit. I don't see anytime soon France accepting to not have the Strasbourg seat of the parliament. The object, whatever you may think of the Strasbourg seat debate, they objectively have no interest whatsoever in in losing the seat of the parliament in Strasbourg, whether at economic level or political level. Because economic level, I mean, you have every month at between let's say 5,000 and 10,000 people who show up in the city for 1 week, who go to the hotel or go to the restaurant every evening. So that's a lot of a big input of cash in the city. And the city of Strasbourg, I mean, over the past 50 years, has built itself around the idea that there would be 5 to 10,000 wealthy people showing up in the city once a month. So economically, that would be a big loss for Strasbourg in its region. I have my doubt that a university would be able to compensate that. And at political level, they have no reason to accept anything less, because I mean, they have the seat, the official seat, not just a place of working, the official seat of one of the three main EU institutions. Trading that with a university politically and in terms of political symbolism, that's nowhere near close to it. So France has no interest to give that up today. Paris was almost another seat indeed. Was there a fun fact about that? Because I know I have a fun fact about it, but indeed, historically speaking, Paris was supposed to be the seat of the European Commission. That was initially the deal, but back then, one of the French ministers in the government, who was from Strasbourg, blocked the decision because he was afraid that having the commission in Paris would be too much stealing the light away from Strasbourg that had the European Parliament. So the solution to the problem was that until there was a definitive solution to be found, Belgium would host the commission on a temporary basis. So technically, until I think 1992, the commission was established in Brussels as a temporary decision. It was actually on the letterheads of every document of the commission. It was written that the address, the Berlaymont address in Brussels, was a temporary address. So yeah, Belgium becoming the accidental European capital is definitely a thing. What else? Trade union. The Vestager middle finger thing. I love that. I love that one as well. It's a classic whenever people are talking about writing about Vestager. Actually, you should say Vestager. Almost as good as one of the EU funding motivation was France's wish to get the Saarland coal. Yes and no. It was about controlling the coal, or at least preventing, for starters, Germany to rebuild an army, and also because the alternative that Germany and the US were pushing was indeed to give back the Saarland. Give back the Saarland to the German, and of course the French wanted that. They wanted to keep control. Did Vestager earn the finger or not? That would be up to Icarus to say whether it was deserved. But I mean, she took it well. It's on her desk, so I think she liked it as a joke, and it makes for a funny kind of anecdotes. What else do I have on my pretty little list? The Parliament initiative. The right of initiative for the Parliament. So again, it's very much a classic, because the European Parliament is what you could call an incomplete Parliament, constitutionally speaking, because it doesn't have the right of initiative, so it cannot create a law itself. It doesn't have the power to decide on the budget, and it doesn't have the power on the constitution. So here, the treaty. So those are the three things that a normal national parliament has that the European Parliament does not have. So that's why we the parliament is often referred to as an incomplete, a partial parliament. Oh, you're in different trade unions. That's busy. But yeah, I think we covered more or less the main topics. So let me know if you have other comments or questions. In the meantime, I'm just looking at the chat to see if I missed stuff. And it doesn't look like. I don't see anything, so I think I'm gonna start my conclusion. So I hope you enjoyed the interview. What about the EU army? Every time the army is mentioned, politicians say it's hard. Didn't expect them to deal with easy stuff, did we? Yeah, it's hard, but I mean, you didn't hire them to deal with easy stuff, but at the same time, they can only deal with what they can, in the sense that the treaties do not allow for something like a EU army. So, I mean, they may wish. They may wish it as much as they want, but well, they are very limited. And I mean, he said that it could be a long-term perspective, but today, I mean, anyone saying, "Oh yeah, there will be a EU army in 5 years," is just lying. It's not possible, whether legally or politically. And they are. I mean, that's something I mentioned as well. I mentioned in the discussion. You have big political things to solve before you could have a EU army, because it's nice to have an army, but who provides a soldier, who pays for it, who decides the rules of engagement, who decide when it's being deployed, that sort of thing. So it's not something that you decide that could be decided in even 5 years. Just make France the EU army and call it a day. I think France would not necessarily. I mean, no, they would be against it because they don't want to lose control of their own army. But yeah, de facto, it's. I mean, the military power in the EU today, it's France. Huh? It's not Germany. Definitely not. In circle, you're involving people. Regular people are more involved on the topic than politicians. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I see the appeal of saying, "Oh yes, we need a EU army." Yeah, because it's a strong idea. It's appealing, etc. But then, I mean, politicians then they have to deal with the reality of things. So they have to go beyond the slogans. They have to see what's doable or not, and they have to take into account how things are happening. And I mean, I'm French, so EU army is something we love the military initiatives, but at some point you have to take into account what is possible or not. Damn, reality always getting in the way of fun. Yeah, definitely. Looking forward to having France be the American president of our Euro NATO. Yeah, I mean, that's one. I mean, also that's one of the reasons why quite a lot of the country are not quite keen on the French initiative in terms of defense, because they see that as, in fact, France pushing its own interests and not doing something actually European. So that's why there's also resistance, because people don't want to be manipulated into serving the interests of another country. So, like I said, very complicated topic. It's gonna take a while. Shouting at the rest to tell us to spend 2% on defense. Yeah. Okay. Well, I think I covered everything. So, conclusion. I hope you enjoyed the interview. It was very interesting on my side. We do not have another interview this week because it's plenary week. So I will see you this week on Sunday for the news review at 6 in French and at 8 in English. I think next week I have one interview at least, and I have potentially a second one, but it needs to be confirmed. So stay tuned. As always, go on my Discord, go on my Twitter. I put all the links right now in the chat. That way you just have to click and you join the family. And of course, if you haven't already, don't hesitate to follow me here on Twitch. And if you're feeling extra generous, don't hesitate to subscribe. And on this note, well, I wish you a good evening, and I will see you Sunday, I hope. Bye, everyone.